at the same time menacing the hero with all kinds of misfortunes should he refuse to resign her. Now Theseus, having been taught from his youth to reverence the gods, feared to disobey the wishes of Dionysus. He accordingly took a sad farewell of the beautiful maiden who so tenderly loved him, and left her on the lonely island, where she was found and wooed by the wine god. Theseus and his companions felt keenly the loss of their benefactress, and in their grief at parting with her, forgot that the ship still bore the black sails with which she had left the Attic coast. As she neared the port of Athens, Aegeus, who was anxiously awaiting the return of his son on the beach, caught sight of the vessel with its black sails, and concluding that his gallant son had perished, threw himself in despair into the sea. With the unanimous approval of the Athenians, Theseus now ascended the vacant throne, and soon proved himself to be not only a valiant hero, but also a wise prince and prudent legislator. Athens was at this time but a small city, surrounded by a number of villages, each of which possessed its own separate form of government. But by means of kind and conciliatory measures, Theseus induced the heads of these different communities to resign their sovereignty, and to entrust the administration of public affairs to a court, which should sit constantly at Athens, and exercise jurisdiction over all the inhabitants of Attica. The result of these judicious measures was that the Athenians became a united and powerful people, and that numbers of strangers and foreigners flocked to Athens, which became a flourishing maritime port and a commercial centre of great importance. Theseus renewed the Isthmian Games, and also instituted numerous festivals, the principal of which was the Panathenaea, held in honour of Athena Polias. It is related that Theseus, upon one occasion, arrived during a voyage at the Amazonian coast. Anxious to ascertain the object of his visit, the Amazons sent Hippolyta, one of their number, with presents to the stranger. But no sooner did the fair herald set foot on board his vessel than Theseus set sail and carried her off to Athens, where he made her his queen. Enraged at this indignity, the Amazons determined to be revenged. Some time afterwards, when the whole affair would appear to have been forgotten, they seized the opportunity when the city of Athens was in a defenceless condition, and landed an army in Attica. So sudden was their attack that they had penetrated into the very heart of the city before the Athenians could organize their forces. But Theseus expeditiously collected his troops, and commenced such a furious onslaught upon the invaders that, after a desperate encounter, they were driven from the city. Peace was then concluded, whereupon the Amazons vacated the country. During this engagement, Hippolyta, forgetful of her origin, fought valiantly by the side of her husband against her own kinsfolk, and perished on the field of battle. It was soon after this sad event that Theseus joined the world-renowned Caledonian boar hunt, in which he took a leading part. He also formed one of the brave band who shared in the perils of the Argonautic expedition. The remarkable friendship which existed between Theseus and Pirithoeus originated under such peculiar circumstances that it is worthy of mention. Hearing upon one occasion that his herds, pasturing in the plains of Marathon, had been carried off by Pirithoeus, Theseus collected together an armed force and sallied forth to punish the plunderer. But when the two heroes met face to face, both were seized with an impulse of sympathetic admiration for each other. Pirithoeus, holding out his hand in a token of peace, exclaimed, "What satisfaction shall I render thee, O Theseus? Be thou thyself the judge." Theseus seized the proffered hand and replied, "I ask naught save thy friendship," whereupon the heroes embraced each other and swore eternal fidelity. When, soon afterwards, Pirithoeus became united to Hippodamia, a Thessalian princess, he invited Theseus to the wedding feast, which was also attended, among other guests, by a large number of centaurs, who were friends of Pirithoeus. Towards the end of the banquet, Eurytion, a young centaur, heated and flushed with wine, seized the lovely bride and sought by force to carry her off. The other centaurs, following his example, each endeavoured to capture a maiden. Pirithoeus and his followers, aided by Theseus, who rendered most valuable assistance, attacked the centaurs, and, after a violent hand-to-hand struggle in which many perished, forced them to relinquish their prey. After the death of Hippolyta, Theseus sought the hand of Phaedra, the sister of his former bride Ariadne, to whom he became united. For some years they lived happily together, and their union was blessed by the birth of 2 sons. During this time Hippolytus, the son of the Amazonian queen, had been absent from home, having been placed under the care of the king's uncles in order to be educated. When, having grown to manhood, he now returned to his father's palace, his young stepmother Phaedra fell violently in love with him. But Hippolytus failed to return her affection, and treated her with contempt and indifference. Filled with rage and despair at his coldness, Phaedra put an end to her existence, and when she was discovered by her husband, she held in her hand a letter accusing Hippolytus of being the cause of her death, and of having conspired against the honour of the king. Now Poseidon had, upon one occasion, promised to grant Theseus whatever request he should demand. He therefore called upon the sea god to destroy Hippolytus, whom he cursed in the most solemn manner. The father's awful malediction fell but too soon upon his innocent son, for, as the latter was driving his chariot along the seashore between Troizina and Athens, a monster sent by Poseidon rose out of the deep, and so frightened the horses that they became altogether unmanageable. As they rushed on in their mad career, the chariot was dashed to pieces, and the unfortunate youth, whose feet had become entangled in the reins, was dragged along until life was nearly extinct. In this condition he was found by the unhappy Theseus, who, having ascertained the true facts of the case from an old servant of Phaedra, had hastened to prevent the catastrophe. But he arrived too late, and was only able to soothe the last moments of his dying son by acknowledging the sad mistake which he had committed, and declaring his firm belief in his honour and innocence. After these events, Theseus was persuaded by his friend Pirithoeus, who had also about this time lost his young wife Hippodamia, to join him in a journey through Greece, with the object of carrying off by force the most beautiful maidens whom they should chance to meet. Arrived at Sparta, they beheld, in the temple of Artemis, Helen, the daughter of Zeus and Leda, who was engaged in performing sacred dances in honour of the goddess. Although the maiden was only 9 years old, the fame of her beauty, which was destined to play so important a part in the history of Greece, had already spread far and wide. Theseus and Pirithoeus forcibly abducted her, and then, having cast lots for her, she fell to Theseus, who placed her under the charge of his mother, Aithra. Pirithoeus now requested Theseus to assist him in his ambitious scheme of descending to the lower world and carrying off Persephone, the queen of Hades. Though fully alive to the perils of the undertaking, Theseus would not forsake his friend, and together they sought the gloomy realm of shades. But Aegeus had been forewarned of their approach, and scarcely had the two friends set foot within his dominions when, by his orders, they were seized, bound with chains, and secured to an enchanted rock at the entrance of Hades. Here the two friends languished for many years, until Heracles passed by, in his search for Cerberus, when he released Theseus, but in obedience to an injunction of the gods left Pirithoeus to endure for ever the punishment of his too daring ambition. While Theseus was imprisoned in the underworld, Castor and Pollux, the brothers of Helen, invaded Athens and demanded the restoration of their young sister. Seeing his country threatened with the horrors of warfare, an Athenian citizen named Academus, who knew of Helen's place of concealment, repaired to the camp of the Dioscuri and informed them where they would find her. Aithra at once resigned her charge, whereupon the brothers took leave of Athens, and accompanied by Helen returned to their native country. But the prolonged absence of Theseus gave rise to other troubles of a more serious character. Thinking the opportunity favourable for a revolt, a faction, headed by Menesthius, a descendant of Erechtheus, arrogated to themselves supreme power and seized the reins of government. Returned to Athens, Theseus at once took active measures to quell the insubordination which existed on all sides. He expelled Menesthius from office, rigorously punished the ringleaders of the revolt, and placed himself once more upon the throne. But his hold upon the people was gone. His former services were all forgotten, and finding at length that dissensions and revolts were rife, he voluntarily abdicated the throne and retired to his estates in the island of Scyros. Here Lycomedes, king of the island, feigned to receive him with the utmost friendship, but being, as it is supposed, in league with Menesthius, he led the old king to the summit of a high rock, under pretence of showing him his estates, and treacherously killed him by pushing him over the cliff. Many centuries after his death, By the command of the oracle of Delphi, Cimon, the father of Miltiades, at the conclusion of the Persian War, brought the remains of Theseus, the great benefactor of Athens, to that city, and in his honour a temple was erected, which exists to the present day, and serves as a museum of art.